Okay, we're going live. Okay, we are live. Okay, Kevin, I just want to give me a quick mic check.
Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Okay, we're good. Okay. All right. Well, first off, I'd like to welcome everyone to we're live here. This is our very first live stream right here on the Buffalo History Channel. This is kind of a bit of a test run here. I haven't done this before, so we're going to see how this whole thing works out. Trying something new and different here. But I'm very pleased to have a very special guest right here. He is he was the head of the Buffalo chapter of the Black Panther Party. You know, over the years we've heard various stories here and there that there was a chapter of the Black Panthers in the city of Buffalo. What I want to do before I get to Kevin, I want to kind of set the stage for you, the viewer, as well as for Kevin. Back in the mid-90s, I was embarking on putting together a documentary on the history of the Build organization. And I was lucky enough to come to Canisius College, where they were housing a ton of newsreel footage from all the different TV stations. And as I was looking through the films for information on the Build organization, I came across a couple of films which talked about the chapter of the Black Panthers in Buffalo, and pulled a couple of those films and saw that there was a press conference that Kevin was featured in, where he talked about a raid that was performed on the Black Panthers headquarters. And I've held on to that film for over a decade. 2015, fast forward, we posted it on my Urban Legacy Filmworks Facebook page, and it got a number of different views, and a lot of people remembered it. And fast forward again to 2018, when I was getting ready to relocate out of the city of Buffalo to the state of Maryland, a lady by the name of Brenda Brown had connected me with Kevin Blackford, but we were trying to get our schedules to connect. But I was on my way out of Buffalo. He was in New York, and we had originally scheduled to get together in the month of May. Of course, as everyone knows now, we're in the midst of a global pandemic with the coronavirus, so that's kind of shut a lot of things down. So I started putting together the Buffalo History Channel, and here we are. So now we're going to make the interview happen right here and right now on the Buffalo History Channel. So I'd like to say, first and foremost, Kevin Blackford, welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here, Doug. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, when we talked, you were telling me that the start of the origin of the Buffalo chapter of the Black Panthers actually had its beginnings on the heels of the 1967 Buffalo Riot, which I recently produced a documentary, 67 Buffalo Uprising, on. Take us back to the 1967 Buffalo Riot, share your memories, and talk to us about how that led up to the formation of the Black Panther chapter in Buffalo.
Sure. Well, back in 1967, that was a very turbulent time in the country. The Vietnam War was raging, and black people, and just people in general, everyone was complaining about our situation, our urban situation. And then it just got to a point and it boiled over. Several other cities had an uprising. Newark, New York, Maryland, all over the country. And it just got to the point where we had got frustrated, and it just happened. It just exploded all at one time.
Okay, and so how did that? Do you remember where you were when the riots took place?
I lived on DuPont Street, between East Ferry and Woodlawn, and the uprising had actually taken place. The main part was on Jefferson Avenue, which was right around the corner, and it basically happened between East Ferry and Best Street on Jefferson. And at that time, Jefferson was a vibrant community. I mean, you had everything down there. You had clothing stores. You bars, and you had liquor stores, and you had 1,000 people. I mean, I walk down Jefferson Avenue now, and I couldn't believe that it was like that in comparison to back then.
True.
And basically, all of the stores were owned by Caucasian proprietors, and they would rob our community and take their money, take our money to their community, and uplift their communities while they were constantly draining ours. And at that time, there was a lot of industry in Buffalo. You had Bethlehem Steel, you had Republic Steel, you had Ford, you had Chevy, you had a host of other milling industries. For example, General Foods and Gold Medal Flour and everything, because Buffalo was strategically located on Lake Erie, which was an important waterway at that time. Water was one of the cheapest and easiest transportation methods which people could use, and that's why Buffalo was so booming at the time. And as time went on, those industries moved out, and the community actually died virtually. A lot of people don't realize it, that the city of Lackawanna was created for Bethlehem Steel, because a lot of people would come up from the south to get a job in the mill. But that's what they used to say, a job in the mill, the steel plant. And that's how Lackawanna was actually formed. But at that particular time, it just got to a point in things that just boiled over in the country, because people were becoming more politically conscious. And that's what happened.
Wow. So how did that bring you to formulating the Black Panthers in Buffalo?
Well, after that time, as I said, it was a very important time where people were politically conscious. We were actually going through a mini revolution. If people are old enough to remember that, that was the hippie generation, and everybody was, smoking pot and, talking politics, and they were feeling liberated. And what happened was, as I said, it was a time for political consciousness. Not everybody was trying to drive a Cadillac and have nice jewelry and long shoes on. A lot of people were just tired of. And then you had a very important person around that time in the Black community called Martin Sostre.
Yes,
and he was advocating politics, and he had a bookstore right on the corner of Jefferson and Woodlawn. And a lot of us young idealists would listen to him and talk, and he would had books and literature and tell us about things that were going on around the world. And eventually he was shut down and locked up on trumped up charges and stayed in prison for a long time. But he was one of the first beginners of the movement there that enlightened young people such as myself. I think I must have been about 16 years old at that time.
Wow. Okay. So you were telling me about there, and I saw it on the banner in the film. It was something called the National Committee to Combat Fascism.
Sure.
Okay.
In the beginning, it started out with these two guys, Freeman and Farrell Tate. They were twins, and they worked at this drugstore on Main Street in Allen. And what they did was they took their own money and stuff, and they actually had started uniting us, and we formed an organization called BAM, the Black Action Movement. And at this time, I was dealing with some radicals, white radicals, up at the University of Buffalo, and they were called Youth Against War Fascism. Now, they were the only organized group that we had to relate to up at the University of Buffalo. And this had to be, I think it was about 68, 69, yeah.
Okay.
And as I said, I was hanging around them and reading their literature and helping them with rallies and different stuff, because they were organized, and they had a committee, and they were advocating the Fremont Sostre. And as I said, they were about the only politically organized group up at the University of Buffalo.
Okay.
About the war movement, and I was a student there in my beginning year, and I ended up getting suspended because I was charged with rioting in the first degree, and I was suspended from the university. And like I say, I was hanging around with this group, and well, after Freeman and Farrell's group fell apart, we were still loosely connected with the Black community. So I said, hey, I'm going up to New York and see if we can get a chapter. And that's what eventually happened. So as I got up to New York, I met Shafini Shakur, which was Tupac's mom. As a matter of fact, she was pregnant with him at that time.
Wow, much respect.
Yeah, and Deruba Moore, which was AKA is allegedly known as Tupac's father, and there was Joan Bird and Jamal Joseph, and the New York 21. That's what they called
Panther 21. Yep.
They were charged with conspiracy to bomb buildings in New York, and they had a very famous trial with Judge Murtaugh, and as I said, the Panther organization was up and running there. So as I went there, I told them that I was interested in forming a Black Panther Party. Okay. But what happened was, at that particular time, there was a moratorium on all Black Panther chapters. So they weren't actually having any organized Black Panther chapters anymore around the country, because at that particular time, we were all young, and we didn't understand the mechanism of politics. And we didn't realize that there were informers and infiltrators, because there was a war against the Black community and the Panthers in general by Herbert Hoover. And
J. Edgar Hoover.
At that particular time, Bobby Seale was locked up.
Right.
And then they ended up locking up Huey Newton. Well, Huey was knocked up in California because he killed a police officer, John Fry. What Bobby and Huey used to do is they had a police scanner, and they used to listen to it, and any time that the police were called to a particular address, Bobby and Huey would ride around, and Bobby carried a 45 and Huey carried a shotgun, because at that time, I mean, it was bad. It was very bad as far as police were persecuting Black people. You come up and you be arrested, and they beat you and everything. So Bobby and Huey would show up, and as I said, one day there was a confrontation, and Huey ended up using the shotgun, and he killed the officer John Fry, and they took him into custody, and the Panther organization had rallied around him and free Huey. And then, as I said, Bobby got locked up in New Haven because there was an informant. His name was Alex Rackley, and he was allegedly killed by the Black Panther Party because he was a suspected informer, and Bobby was supposed to be on the set, so they locked Bobby up, and everyone was rallying around those two. But getting back to how I ended up starting the Panther organization, I went down and I talked to Big Man and Robert Bay. They were in New York. And
now, is that when you say Big Man, that's Elbert Big Man Howard?
Yeah. Okay. And Robert Bay and Sam Napier. Sam Napier was in charge of distribution of the paper. All these people were from the West Coast, because what they did was they had sent out people from the West all over the country, and they were forming chapters. And at that time, as I said, there was a moratorium on starting brand new chapters. So, but what you could form was NCCF, the National Committee to Combat Fascism. Gotcha. And they took me in, and they let me become a Panther, and I went back and formed the National Committee to Combat Fascism chapter, because the BAM organization that Freeman and Farrell started, that it fell apart, and you still had a lot of people that were politically active, and that's how the National Committee of Fascism got started. And what would happen is, once a week, myself and I would pick different people, would go to New York for a staff meeting, and the staff meeting was from chapters all over, up and down the Coast. And we'd have that meeting once a week. And once a month, we would go out to Oakland for a central staff meeting. And that was from people from chapters all over the country.
Wow.
And our basic funding was the selling of the newspaper, Black Panther Party newspaper. And they gave us newspapers, and we sold them, and we built up a chapter in Buffalo.
Okay, so you built up a chapter in Buffalo. Talk to me about what the response of the Black community of Buffalo. What was the community's response to the Black Panthers in Buffalo?
In the beginning, it was lukewarm, and as time went on, we were getting a lot of support because, as I said, we would sell newspapers. The newspapers were 25 cents a piece, and I forget how many thousand we were selling a week. You know, we had to send our portion back to L.A. to the party there. Well, actually, New York, and they would funnel it down through Oakland and L.A. and Frisco. And we started getting more support from the community as they seen that we were serious. We weren't just some kids, some fly-by-night kids overnight. And we'd go all over the city, University of Buffalo, Buffalo State, all up and down Jefferson Avenue, and we sold a lot of papers. A lot of people were interested in what was going on at that time because in the paper it had things that were happening nationally. And of course we had incidents. You know, we had John Huggins when he was murdered out on the University of
L.A.
Yeah, right.
With him and Bunchy Carter.
Right, and then Fred Hampton was murdered in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and all that stuff was you know, in the paper, and that's how a lot of people stayed in touch.
Wow. So the Panthers certainly are known for their programs, the breakfast, the free food program, the breakfast for children program. That they pioneered pretty much many of the healthcare programs that take place in the community. Talk about some of the programs that you had going on in the Buffalo community.
Okay, we had a real good free breakfast for children program, and you know, at first, you know, 1 or 2 kids would come by, and then as their parents became aware of what we were doing, we had a number of kids come by, and you know, we would cook and we would give them a free breakfast in the morning, grits and eggs and pancakes and sausage and, you know, stuff like that. And what would happen was the community started donating because we were asking for donations in order to stay viable, and we were getting pretty good donations. A lot of businesses in the community would support us, but basically they were supporting us because they didn't want any trouble. Not that we were giving any, but they just figured it was good politics for them. You know, let it be known that they were supporting the Black Panther Party's free breakfast for children program, and we also had a medical program. There were several interns that were donating their time from UB, and we had let me see. There was a free breakfast for children program. There was the healthcare program, and the legal program. We had a lot of people from Buffalo Law School that were donating their time to help with legal matters. And, you know, people would get arrested in the city for various things, and they would donate their time and energy. And once a couple of them were released, you know, word spread like wildfire. Hey, listen, the Panthers will help you, you know. And that's how we got. That's basically the 3 programs that we were able to have that were sustainable.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Okay, so when I was putting together Build, and I came across the film of the Black Panthers, I also famously, I guess at this point, came across a film that highlighted the street gangs in Buffalo. And Yeah, I've always heard stories about the connection with the Panthers and the street gangs and how there was an effort to bring the street gangs together. I know I interviewed Sam Smith back in 2007. He talked about how they came together with the formed the New Visions Unlimited. But I guess the Panthers also had an effort to bring the Buffalo street gangs together. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure, sure. Now you have to understand that Buffalo, or the Black Panthers in general, we weren't a bunch of pseudo intellectuals. We were people from the street. We were known as the party had called us the lumpkin proletariat,
Yes,
the working class,
absolutely.
the uneducated, and we also understood that gangs were a problem in our communities, that we shouldn't be fighting each other. We should unite and try to fight the system, fight the power. And at that particular time, we had several gangs. We had the Manhattan Lovers, and we had the Fillmore a la Turks. We had the Mad Dogs. We had the Matadors, and they were from all over the city, and they were at war with each other. So myself and a couple of other people, we decided to have an initiative, and we went and talked to each one of these sets, and we came up with the solution of, let's have a gang conference. Let's sit down and talk about it. What's the problem? Why are we fighting each other? And eventually, what came out of that was they were fighting each other because they had a lot of pent up energy, and Black people didn't own anything, so they claimed their portion of the city, downtown, Fillmore, the Superiors were out in lakefront projects.
Okay.
And we talked to each one of them, and we got together, and we said we were going to try to have a conference and sit down and talk about it. And we did, and we all met up on I think it was Best and Jefferson Avenue. There was this place, supermarket called Loblaws.
Right.
It had a big parking lot, and that's where we got together and had the conference. And we sat down and we talked, and there was a temporary truce. And in other words, what we were trying to do, we were trying to politicize these gangs, because we knew that there was strength in numbers, and if we can put together all of these gangs and stop this war, we'd have a powerful force, and we'd be able to make demands of the city in Buffalo, especially if we could stop all that nonsensical killings and everything. And if they found out that everyone was operating independently but as one, that we would have a force that would have to be reckoned with. And that's how the gang conference came up.
Okay. As I said earlier, when I found the newsreel about the Black Panthers, and you were talking about the raid on the Black Panther headquarters, we talked briefly about it when we spoke on the phone. Can you share the story behind that newsreel? The newsreel's been shared on Facebook since 2015. I know you told me that you told me briefly that you almost lost your life in that situation. Take us back to that situation that was on that newsreel.
Okay. Well, the party held the People's Revolutionary Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, and every chapter in the country came down there. And Michael Sechuel Tabor, he was one of the great speakers at that time, and he was motivating. So we took.
Yeah, I remember. I've seen films of him.
Yeah, he was something else. He was before his time. But anyway, we were coming back. We had a delegation. We had taken about 8 people down there, and we had a delegation, and we were coming back from Philadelphia. And what happened at our headquarters, of course, they had taught us how to set it up, and we were sandbagged. We had sandbags, and we had rifle slots, and in other words, we were protecting ourselves, because at that time, as I said, there was a lot of confusion, and the police they were attacking our offices, and defend ourselves. That was one of the main points of our platform. That's why Huey was in jail. That's why Bobby was in jail, because we weren't going to let them just do what they had been doing with passive resistance. We an eye for an eye, armed struggle. If they use guns, we're going to use guns. And we had our headquarters set up and everything. And we were coming back from the convention at Philadelphia. It must have been about 10 or 11 o'clock. Okay. And we were coming into getting out the car and coming into the office. And I happened at the time to have a shotgun that I was bringing into the headquarters. And we were under surveillance, and what happened was one of the officers had made the call, Black Panthers, they got guns. So we went in, and I got a call, and I was told that, by one of the black officers that, you guys, watch yourselves, be ready, because they're getting ready to come in. So I informed everybody, so we all got in our positions. And we used to have target practice, and we used to go out and shoot. And we had at that particular time AK-47s, we had 45s, we had 30-06s, we had 30 caliber carbines, and everyone knew how to shoot, and everybody knew what to do. And what happened was, once I got the call, when we got into the readiness position, there was a knock at the door, and I told everybody, listen, take your positions. And we weren't going to open the door, because we figured if we opened the door, they would just bum rush us in there and, just start shooting. So we said that if they come in and if we were going to die, we wanted to be in the right. They were invading our home, and we felt that we had the right to defend our home. And they knocked on the door, and I forget who it was, but they were going to answer. I said, no, under no circumstances are we going to answer the door. We're going to let them kick it in, and when they kick it in, we're going to start firing, because they're going to come in firing. And thank God we didn't answer the door. And they were, I didn't find this out until after the fact, that they had snipers on the roof. They had I don't know how many people outside, but I guess it was rehearsed. They were ready for armed confrontation, because we weren't going to go quietly. And at the last minute, it was called off. And then the next day, I found out that what was going to take place. And thank God we didn't open the door, because that was the plan. Once we opened that door, they were coming in. And if they would have came in, we were going to, start shooting, because they were going to come in shooting. And eventually I was arrested. For that. And they had charged me with possession of a loaded firearm. And eventually we went to trial, and we beat the case, because it wasn't against the law at that time to have a loaded shotgun, a loaded firearm. Well, as long as it was in plain sight. Now, you couldn't have a loaded pistol or anything hiding it, but there was no law against having a loaded rifle in plain sight. And that's what happened. I was acquitted. And matter of fact, some of the gang members, a lot of them, when I was in jail waiting to make bail, they came down and they had a little demonstration, saying free Kevin Blackford, and they marched around the jail and everything. And eventually, my bail was paid and I got out.
Okay.
But yeah, that was that incident, and it was a very, very crucial incident, because it was touch and go. Because if we said if we're going to die, we're going to be martyrs, so don't worry about it, And like I said, I found out a lot more details after the fact. That was the plan. They were going to come in there. They were going to kill me, first of all, because I was the one who had founded the chapter, because they had, at the time we didn't know it, but they had their spies and their informants and stuff. And we were all young at the time, and we didn't know the intricacies of intelligence and how the the police and how law enforcement operated about placing informants in particular spots to get information, et cetera, et cetera. And that was how that happened.
Wow. Well, now we know finally it's good to hear the story behind how all that came about. I've had that film for so many years but never even knew if I would even meet you or even talk to you. So it was good to hear that story.
Well, see, that's why we had the news conference, and that's a very, very important tape, because if anyone has the chance to watch it, I would recommend that they watch it. I'm sure they can get the website from you.
Yeah.
Because as I said, we made statements and we told them that we would not be intimidated. And we felt as if they came into our homes as gangsters and criminals, they would be dealt with like gangsters and criminals coming into our home. Okay. And we were ready. It was getting ready to go down.
Yeah.
I don't know what police captain it was who ordered them to stand down, but that's the only thing that saved my life, because they had orders to kill me.
Yeah. Now I want to find out the headquarters itself. Where exactly on East Ferry was it located? I heard that it was like located across from like Doris, where Doris Records is. Where exactly was the location of the headquarters?
Okay, it was located on East Ferry between DuPont and Jefferson, across from Kaufman's Bakery.
Okay.
Directly across from. See, Doris Records was down the street going toward Jefferson, but we were closer to DuPont. We were around the corner from DuPont, almost directly across from Kaufman's Bakery. That's where some of their snipers had perched up on the roof of Kaufman's Bakery at that particular time.
Okay. There were a lot of different organizations that were around during the time of the Panthers in Buffalo. Did you have any working relationships with organizations like Build, or were you involved with the Model Cities program or the Black Development Foundation or anything of that nature?
Well, we used to deal with Bill because through Bill Gator. Because at that particular time, Bill Gator was the president or CEO of Build, and as far as Model Cities and everything was concerned, that was when the government, after the riots and everything, they figured that they would throw money at the problem. They figured that the leaders could be bought off from the top, and they threw lots of money at the problem while they got themselves ready. They said when the riots happened, the administration was caught flat-footed. They had never had any detailed plan for putting down an uprising, because they never figured that Black people would rise up. Right. And they were caught flat-footed, and they knew the best way to go ahead and quell the situation while they prepared themselves was to throw money. So they threw a lot of money to CEO, Model Cities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And but we didn't have anything to do with that. But we dealt with a lot of the organizations that they did have, because some of the organizations did some good things, and like we helped people get jobs, we would send them there, get jobs, and we did work with Bill, because as I said, Bill Gator, he was older at the time, a lot older than us, and he kind of understood what was going on. So he did a lot of good things for us, and as I said, he was older, so he had more experience in dealing with the administration at the time. So and he was able to get things done. He was able to help us and supply us with different stuff, and gave us good advice. So that's how we ended up dealing with Bill Gator at the time.
Okay. The Panthers, throughout their existence as a whole, always had a strong image in the media. You could always see iconic photographs and legendary sound bites and press conferences all across the country. I wanted to know, what was your did you do anything in particular, like with the to keep your images out there with Black outlets like the radio stations, WUFO, WBLK, even some of the TV stations when they had some of their Black oriented programming?
Not really. Not really. We figured that we knew that the media was very important as far as getting our message out. But in order for us to have dealings with them, through national. It would have to go through the central committee, because we weren't organized. I mean, we weren't in the position, or we didn't have the necessary permission to hold different press conferences and stuff on our own, because we were speaking in reference to a national organization, the Black Panther Party. So when I gave that news conference, I had to get permission. It had to go through New York, and it had to go through Oakland. Before I was able to do that. But we also knew that the media was a very powerful voice, and that was one of the ways in which we can get our message out. Because don't forget, we were a self-funding organization. We didn't have millions of dollars, and we were at war because, as I said, Herbert Hoover had declared war on us. And
you mean J. Edgar Hoover?
Yeah, he was the FBI attorney. Right. He was in charge of the FBI at the time.
Now, COINTELPRO.
Right, COINTELPRO, exactly.
Were there any efforts? Didn't mean to interrupt you. Were there any efforts that you can recall that COINTELPRO was used on you within the city of Buffalo?
I can't say for sure, but we always figured it. The national had figured it because they knew what was going on. They had information in reference to that, and they would pass their information on to us. But I can't say directly that they had any. I know we were in their sights because we were considered a radical organization, a Black radical organization. Don't forget, Build and all these other organizations. They were peaceful, but we advocated. Listen, if they're gonna shoot at us, we're gonna shoot back at them. And Build was like a community organization. And they weren't, advocating violence. They weren't advocating overthrowing the government. They were advocating, self-help, but not in that respect. We were talking about, separation. We weren't talking about going back to Africa because we didn't come here voluntarily. We came here, we were brought here, and we built this country. So we figured we had a stake in it. So we weren't talking about going back to Africa like a lot of the cultural nationalists were doing at the time.
And of course, there was a clashing with the US organization.
Ron Karanga and that outfit. Yeah. Okay. They were supposed to be the ones that had killed John Huggins out in UCLA campus.
Right. Okay. Now, towards the 70s, I was wondering. At a certain point, there was right around the early 70s. There was a split in the party between some of the factionalisms with Huey when he got out of jail and Eldridge Cleaver, and then it eventually splintered off, and they started the Black Liberation Army and the Underground. Was the Buffalo chapter involved in any of that aspect?
Well, I'll just say it like that. There was a war amongst us, and some people eventually did get involved. A good friend of mine, Robert Webb, and Sam Napier, they were out of LA, and here's what the problem was. The problem was, like back in 1968, there was the SDS, the Students for a Democratic Society, and there was a convention out in Chicago, the Democratic National Convention, and SDS was holding a convention at the time too. It was in this big place, and I don't know if you remember, back in the day they used to have like a gym. They would have a door that they would close, and it would separate, two sides, one side from the other side. And during that conference out there, the SDS conference, they split up, and there was Rim 1 and Rim 2. Rim 2 eventually became the Weathermen, and they had gotten on the page that we were on. We figured that, it was time. We actually believed it was time for the revolution, and there needed to be more action taken. And that's how the Weathermen got together with the BLA, which the BLA was the faction of the Panthers that decided that, it was time for armed struggle. That's when there was a lot of controversy. That's when the party split up, because half said it's time to take the fight to them, and the other half said, no, let's keep on the path that we were going. And that's how the BLA formed, and they got together. Well, they had ties. They white person couldn't be a Panther, but they could help us organize.
Right.
So the weathermen and the BLA, they got together and had different actions. Armor. That's how they would fund themselves. Bank robberies, armored car robberies, after-hour joint robberies, and stuff like that. But in any event, that's what happened. Some people advocated it's time to take the fight to them, which was assassinations of police officers and black quote unquote Uncle Toms, people that were allegedly selling out the black community, and that was how the party disintegrated. I had a chance to meet Papa Rage. Well, that's what we called Eldridge Cleaver, Papa Rage, and I remember when little Bobby Hutton got killed. He was the first Panther to get killed. Right. Him and Eldridge Cleaver. Eldridge Cleaver, he eventually fled over to Africa, formed the Panther chapter over there. But that's what happened. Okay,
so what ended it for the Black Panther Party in Buffalo? When did the Buffalo chapter come to an end?
The split. That's when the split happened nationally.
Okay.
And the split happened actually because we had our own opinions also. A lot of us felt that it was time to take the fight to the police. We were young and we didn't understand the true nature of politics, and we didn't understand the true nature of the system. This is how Bobby Rush became political in Chicago and was eventually elected. Because some people felt like that was the way we could change the system within the system, and others felt, no, we got to throw this system out and start a brand new one.
Okay. Well, in conclusion to this, is there anything else that you'd like to add that I might have missed that you'd like to know for the audience to know?
Yeah, I would like the audience to know that it's important. It's important to see. At that time, I didn't understand that our children are the future. I was young, brash, a lot of energy, wanted to make something happen. But eventually I came to the conclusion, okay, this might not be the best system in the world, but of course it's not the worst. And, I didn't know that it was a lot easier to change the system within in comparison to overthrowing the system, throwing it out and starting a new one, because I never thought about, well, once you throw it out, what you're going to replace it with? There's going to be a void. It's going to be a vacuum. And I would just like to tell everyone that our future we should make a significant investment in our children, because that's the future. That's who's going to change things, and it's very important. See, children want to be what they see. So if they see people out cussing and their moms and dads fighting and whatever, they're gonna figure that's what they're supposed to do. And as I said, I'm just of the opinion. I'm 68, probably 68 in August now, and I understand that as people, if we really want to do something for ourselves, teach our children, because they're the ones that's going to pick up the mantle, and we have to leave them a decent legacy to follow. We need doctors, we need lawyers, we need politicians. I never in my lifetime thought that I would live to see the day when a black man became president. Right. Now, for me to talk like this now, if I was talking like that back then, I would be considered Uncle Tom. But I was young, I didn't understand. Right. But I understand now. That's where we need to make a significant investment in our children. We lost a whole generation to crack, because what happened was the mothers and fathers left the kids, and the kids grew up on their own. That's how there's such gang problem like it is now, because they didn't have a family and they gravitated to gangs, and the gangs were their family, and the kids that develop their morals and their principles. But we have to set an example. We have to make a significant investment in our children and lead them on the right path, because in order to change a system, you have to understand a system, and in order to understand a system, you have to know how a system works. And if you can do that, then you can make significant change, because as I said, this country might have a lot of flaws in it, but I've been all over the world now, and this is the greatest country in the world. And as I said, I hope people don't think me to be Uncle Tom or anything now, but I'm just talking through years of experience. We got a lot of problems, but we got a lot of good things going on now too. And we're just as smart, just as intelligent, and have just as much sense as the people in power. And as I said, it's up to us to educate our children and to explain to them, talk to them, let them know children aren't crazy. They see what's going on. They might not react or respond at that particular moment, but they see what's going on. They see what you're doing,
Absolutely.
But that's all I want to say in reference to that, Doug.
All right, brother. Well, Kevin Blackford, it was certainly a pleasure and as well as an honor and a privilege to have you right here on the Buffalo History Channel. You're actually our first live stream interview on social media, YouTube. So we'd like to thank you for coming on with us and getting together finally.
And I'd like to thank you for having me, and I hope that by me sharing my life and my legacy, because Doug, it goes quick, man. It goes real quick. I didn't realize how quick it goes. And me and the friends that I have more friends in the ground than I do above the ground. And then when I do run into them and we talk about 1960s and 1970s like it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember. I was listening to a couple guys talking, a couple young kids, and they were saying, yeah, I knew they couldn't have been any more than, in their 20s or anything. And they were saying, yeah, back in the day, this happened and that happened. I remember back in the day. I said, you talking about back in the day? What year you talking about? Yeah, I'm talking about 2015, 2016. I'm saying, and that's back in the day. I said, man, listen, you guys haven't seen nothing yet.
Sure have.
But it goes quick, and don't waste it, man, because you can't get it back. My mother used to always tell me, listen, you better stay young as long as you can, because you're gonna be old for a long time. And she was right.
Yeah.
she was dead right. So, like I said, I just want to encourage anyone to leave your legacy and make an investment in our children, because that's what you're going to be known for, what they do.
Okay.
And I'd like to thank you for having me, Doug.
Absolutely. All right, brother. I'm going to have you stay on the phone with me. I got to end this stream. I want to thank everybody for tuning into the live stream. This will be replayed here, as well as I got another camera rolling, so we're going to have another version of it as well. So thanks for tuning into the Buffalo History Channel, and we'll be back with more content.